Hello, and welcome back to the Burnt Pancakes podcast. I am your host, Katie Fensky, and I'm here to remind moms that everyone burns their first pancake. Now, if I say the words college tuition, does that make you panic? Because I know the thought of sending my 3 boys to college is enough to take my breath away. But that is the reality of today's world, is that we are going to be sending our kids to colleges that cost a lot of money. My husband and I are very, very fortunate that because of our parents and scholarships that we received, we were able to graduate debt free, and we would love to be able to do that for our kids one day. So I have a very special guest coming on today. My first ever dad on this conversation. I'll call this my dadversation. I'm sitting down and talking with Dave Peterson, also known as Dave the Scholarship Coach. Dave is the father of a third-year college student who, to this date, has won over $95,000 in scholarships and is on track to not only graduate from college debt-free, but entirely for free. Dave now works with high school students and their families to help them fund their own debt-free college journey. And he is the host of his own podcast, Your Daily Scholarship, where he features a new scholarship or college funding tidbit every day. I absolutely love this conversation. As we were talking, I just had question after question after question about the topic of college scholarships. This is not something that I knew much about. I am not quite there yet with my kids, but this conversation really made me start thinking of the planning we're going to do when they're in high school and before they start college. So I think you will absolutely love this conversation. Hi, Dave. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Katie. Thanks for having me on.
I will say you are the first official dad on my Momversation, so feel honored.
Well, when I woke up this morning and knew this was on my agenda, I was wondering about that. I've listened to some episodes and I had not found any other dads yet, but I hadn't made my way through the full library. So
I do have ideas of dads I want to bring on, and including my husband. I want him to come on at some point, but it's like, oh yeah, we'll do that one day. Like he hasn't jumped on yet. So I'm excited about this.
Yeah.
But your topic is for all of us parents. You are Dave the Scholarship Coach. Give us some background on your son and how you became the scholarship coach.
Yeah, so I got into the world of scholarships strictly to help my son. I knew I wanted him to graduate without student loan debt. And when he hit high school, it kind of dawned on me that my wife and I had not done the savings that we would need to do for him to go to school debt-free. So I started to learn about scholarships. I just dove all in for about a year. I educated myself. He didn't apply for any scholarships. And then his junior year is when we got going with him. We were fortunate he had some early success. He won his first scholarship the first half of his junior year, won 2 more by the end of that year. And then senior year, we just went all in. He applied for close to 100 scholarships before he graduated high school.
Whoa.
And so it was, we even let him quit his part-time job. Now it was around the time of COVID, so that had a little influence as well. So
you're right. This is paying for school, so that is like a little bit of a job. Oh,
okay. Absolutely. So he at graduation, we live in a smallish town. So like if he was awarded a scholarship, he might show up in the newspaper. And then senior awards night, his name just kept being called over and over again for scholarships. And so I had a lot of friends and family asking, how did you guys do this? So after we got him off to college, for the next year, I worked with some friends and family's kids to see, was this just applicable for my son, or was this something that could be replicated? And I found it could be replicated for other kids who were willing to put in some time and effort. So I had success with that. And then so about a little over 2 years ago, I launched my business, nodebtcollege.com, and working with families to help them on their own debt-free college journey now.
Oh, that is so awesome. Do you work one-on-one with parents, or?
I do. I have a few different ways that I work with students. Kind of my premier tier, I guess I would call it, would be one-on-one coaching, where I go out and find the scholarships and then I help them through the entire application process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have tons of questions because my oldest son is going to be 10 soon. So this isn't like quite on the radar, but my husband and I have already talked about oh my gosh, how are we going to send three boys to college?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so
Absolutely.
right now, cost of college, because we have friends who have high school age kids and they have
Okay.
like dropped numbers like, oh, this university costs this. And like, it's enough to like give me a heart attack. Our
Sure.
colleges, like I went in the early 2000s when
Mhm.
I think it was affordable. What's tuition like nowadays?
Yeah, so the numbers that I have, I'm pulling from US News, so I consider that a pretty reputable source.
Okay.
They are showing for just tuition and fees, so not housing, food, books, and
Oh,
other expenses, which you can figure anywhere from double to maybe even 1.5 times what tuition is
for
going to
that.
cost. So just tuition and fees. Public in state's about 11,000 a year. Public out of state's about 24,000 a year, and then private averages over 42,000 a year.
Per year.
Per
Oh, okay.
year. Yeah.
Let's just
Yep.
take a minute and breathe for a sec
Yeah.
before
Yeah.
I
No
have a heart
kidding.
attack. Okay, but you said it is possible to graduate debt free. So my husband and I, we are so fortunate that both of our families, our parents were able to do that. Like I got a scholarship. I had parents that helped out, and that was
Awesome.
huge for us because I know a lot of people are like, instead of a mortgage, paying off their school loans, so they're in their
Yeah.
40s.
Yeah.
And that's a problem right now. So
Yeah.
is it possible to go debt free nowadays?
100%. Yep. It's going to take some time and effort and some strategy, but yes, it is possible. Of course, I focus a lot on scholarships, but I
Okay.
will say, if you can save things like 529 plans, those are great tax advantage ways to do that. That's not
Mhm.
my area of expertise, but I do have some connections with that. One in
Okay.
particular, guy who goes by the college dude, Dan Sinowitz. He's a certified
Love it.
financial planner, and that's his thing. Yeah. Yep. So if savings, that's a great way to start. But if that's not possible, say, you didn't save like I did, then scholarships are a great route to look at. There are scholarships for just about any student. You don't
Wow.
have to be a straight A student, valedictorian. My
That's
student, he was
mhm.
a good student, but he was not the top student in his class
Okay.
by any means. So yeah, yep. And you don't have to be an athlete. My son is far from an athlete. Although he did win a scholarship for playing Little League Baseball. So he only played
Oh,
1 year. And so, yeah,
my kids are in it right now. I gotta.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
Whoa.
start keeping a list of everything that your kids do. And
Oh,
you would be
interesting.
surprised the scholarships that you'll find, even as far back as, like I said, his Little League days.
No way. I feel like questions are just like popping up in my head. Because one of my questions was, are there things that your kids can do to help their chances? So, like they say, volunteering or extracurricular. Little League, I guess, helps. What
Yeah,
are some
yeah, it
things they
can.
can do? Or is it that doesn't matter that they have volunteer hours or
Well, yeah, volunteer hours of the students I work with, and I tend to work with students who are probably, on the higher end academically. The one area that they typically are lacking is volunteerism. So there are five, what I call the five pillars of a winning scholarship. So academics, extracurriculars, volunteerism, leadership, and work experience.
got it?
Don't
Okay.
think of those like a checklist. Think of those more as ways the student can express their interests. So the more you can weave those areas together, I'll give you at least one example with my son. So he planned on being a history professor. That was his dream from a very young,
Mhm.
surprisingly young age. So of course he did well in his history courses in school. Extracurricular wise, he was in the high school history club, and then senior year he became the president of that club. But he volunteered at a local history museum. So he was like the tour guide for the little museum, and he helped supervise building a Vietnam veterans memorial display for local veterans. So it wove that story together of, hey, this kid is really interested in history and he's showing it in a lot of different ways. Now, I've worked with students who, like one, she wanted to become a vet tech. So when I started working with her, I said, could you look for a job at PetSmart or Petco or something like that and quit your job at whatever fast food place it was?
Mhm.
So we were able to help build that narrative. She was already doing a lot of great things. She volunteered at her animal shelter, her local animal shelter, and she was going to school half a day in a vet clinic already. So again, she had built a nice narrative, and I was able to just help her, build a little bit extra. So the more you can
Interesting.
show a passion for something, that's really critical for winning scholarships.
Interesting. Do you ever get kids that are like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm into. I don't know what I want to major in.
Yeah, I do, and I'll say it is definitely harder for them. If you have younger kids, have them try out lots of things, especially like middle school and this first year or two of high school. Let them try everything and then kind of narrow down what do they not like and what do they seem to gravitate towards.
Interesting.
Um, yeah, yep, that definitely helps.
Okay. Another question I had was at what point, at what grade in high school should they start applying? Like, is there a too soon? Are they allowed to start freshman year? How does that work?
Yeah, so I'm going to give you a couple answers.
Okay.
So believe it or not, there are scholarships out there for I've seen now as young as third grade. They are very few and far between,
I'm
and there are
behind.
things
I'm
like
behind.
yeah.
Oh,
No, now I don't want to say I would recommend it, but I certainly would not say don't do it. I mean, I think
okay.
it's awesome. They're going to be typically things like art contest or maybe short little essay contest. Middle school, it starts to bump up a little bit more, and then high school a little bit more. But I'll give my real kind of honest to goodness answer is junior year.
Okay.
Um, there are a couple reasons for that. So first is that kids don't apply for much. Like as adults, we apply for jobs, we apply for mortgages, credit cards, whatever. This could be the first time a kid has ever applied for anything, and just that process can be daunting. So getting them to apply for some scholarships their junior year is going to give them a leg up on, I'll call them their competitors, their peers who are going to be applying for scholarships waiting till their senior year. It's also fantastic preparation for their college application process, because they will understand kind of the same questions and resume things that colleges are looking for, because that's what scholarships are looking for. And there are some really unique scholarships for juniors. There is a full ride scholarship, that's only open to juniors. Yeah, 4-year full ride, everything from
Wow.
tuition to housing and books.
What?
Um, February 1st, a different scholarship that covers full tuition for 4 years, open to juniors, opened. So yeah, there's lots of opportunities for juniors. And then if you apply for those, I always tell the students I work with, we want to win those, but we don't expect to win those. They're super tough, but they're awesome experience to get you prepared for these huge scholarship opportunities that open up senior year.
Oh, that's good to know. So you don't actually have to have like an admission to a college to actually win these scholarships yet. Is there a stipulation? Like, let's say you don't get into college or you decide not to go, do you not get that scholarship? How does that
It's going to
work?
vary from scholarship to scholarship. So most of the ones I'm talking about right now fall into the category of private outside scholarships. They're offered by businesses and philanthropic organizations. Some scholarships are going to say you have to use this money for college. There are others, including many my son won, where they just sent him a check, and well,
What?
he and we were responsible, and we applied it to college. Like he could have used it to
Mm-hmm.
buy a car or whatever he
Oh,
wanted. There was no stipulation, and frankly, no way they would know how that money was spent.
okay. So
Yeah.
as his dad, did you set up a system for tracking all these scholarships? Like, here's your bank account. This is where we're putting the money. Because I feel like you said he got $95,000 worth of scholarships so
Yeah, yep.
far.
He's in his third year of college right now, and he's over 95,000. And we can talk a little bit about some of the other ways to save some money because it's related. But he's looks like he's going to graduate early this summer, so
Oh,
he'll be
wow.
through in 3 years. Yeah,
Wow. So did you organize? Like, it seems like it's a lot to keep track of
it
once you win
is.
these scholarships. How do you go about that?
Yeah, so I just set up a pretty simple spreadsheet. Kept a name of the organization, a link to the actual scholarship, the date the application was due, the dollar amount, and then a date that we expected to hear back. Now, a dirty little secret of scholarships is they're almost always late with their notifications.
Oh, that's good to
So
know.
yeah, yep. So if you don't hear on that date, that doesn't mean you didn't win. If it's a month later, you probably didn't win. So
Got
they're
it.
usually late, but they're close, so, within
Okay.
a week or two. Yeah. And it's always, well, two bits of tips or tricks here. Get your kids in the habit of checking their emails regularly. Um, I was surprised to learn this when I started working with kids is that they don't check email.
You
Um,
check their social media, but not their email.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. And they might find out they lost a scholarship via social media because the winner might be announced. But if they're the winner, they're going to get an email most likely. It's
Okay.
not going to just be announced on social media.
Okay.
And if the other reason to keep your eye on that email is that if you are selected, there can be a very small window to claim that prize.
Oh, got
We
it.
don't know for sure that this is the case, but we very much suspect that one of the scholarships my son won, he was not their first choice because it was so far after we expected to hear anything. We thought, oh, he didn't get this. And like 2 months later, he got an email. So we suspect he was probably not their first choice, but you know what? It was a
Interesting.
$20,000 scholarship, so we didn't care.
Wow. Well, I'll take it. I'll
Yeah, no
take it.
kidding. Yep.
Oh, whoa. Um, do you remember what his first scholarship was that he
I
got?
do. Yeah, it's called the VFW Voice of Democracy. And there's only one scholarship I recommend for every high school student, and that's it. There's a few reasons for that. First of all, you can enter every year of high school. It's a different essay topic, and everything starts at your local VFW post. So it's not guaranteed that your post is going to give a prize, but pretty much all of them do. And it's not anything huge, but it's a way to get their feet wet, and they could win, a few $100s, maybe even $1,000 at the local level. And if they do well at the local level, then they move up through the district and state and into nationals.
Wow. Can any of the scholarship money go towards room and board, or are there some that say this is just for tuition? Others, you said some are just cash.
Yeah, yep. So again, it does vary from scholarship to scholarship. I would say at least half the scholarships are going to say it has to be used for tuition.
Okay.
But there are plenty of scholarships out there that can be used for room, board, books, or like we said, you just get a check and it's yours to do what you want with it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did your son go away to school or is he, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, he goes 1,000 miles door to door. So
Oh,
yeah, we live in
is that
Central Florida, and
hard for you?
it was, yeah, that first year was tough, and it's gotten a little easier, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Spread their
one of
wings.
the things that yeah, one of the things the scholarships has helped paid for is his travel back and forth.
Yeah.
He has that money in his account, so we don't really send him gas money or anything like that. Yeah,
Incredible.
yeah.
Okay, so how do we find all these scholarships? Because it sounds like there's way more out there than I even knew existed. How do you
Oh
find
yeah.
them?
Number of sources. So there are some great scholarship websites, like scholarships.com, Scholarship Owl, Going Merry. There's about a half a dozen really good in-depth sites. Um, those are pretty much all vetted scholarships, and they're legitimate. The problem is that a lot of people are looking in those same places, so you're going to face a lot
Mhm.
of competition. So beyond that, talk to your high school guidance counselor. Hopefully that's a good source. You can look for local community foundations doing Google searches. Um, a really unique one is law firms. Almost every law firm uses scholarships as a marketing tool. Now they're not huge. They're like 1,000, maybe like 5,000 for some. But you don't have to be a law student most of the time. It's simply an essay that the student has to write. And if you start freshman year, you have 4 years of getting better and better at that scholarship.
Wow. Oh, that's
Yeah,
so interesting. Is FAFSA still, because I remember that from when I was applying for school. What is
it
that? And
is.
is it worth it?
Well, yeah, so that stands for the free application for federal student aid. And is it worth it? Well, some schools are going to say you have to do it. It's required if you want to be considered. Even for some schools require it for merit-based aid. It's simply their way of
Oh,
kind of
okay.
getting the student into the system.
Okay.
But typically it's for families and students who might be eligible for need-based aid. It's, for instance, how the Pell Grant is determined.
Okay.
There were some big changes to the FAFSA this year, and I am not a FAFSA expert, but the person I mentioned before, Dan Senowitz, the college dude, that's kind of his area of expertise. And yeah, things changed this year. I know one of the negatives was that they used to look at the fact if you had more than one student in college at a time, they would take that in consideration. Now they don't. So
Mm,
it's basically your family's income and assets, and that's how they use that to determine what they're going to offer you, typically in need-based aid.
okay.
I think something like 99% of the colleges in the country use it. There are some who don't. Um, but yeah, it's something that you're more than likely going to be faced filling out during senior year,
But
starting
you're
your
not
senior year and all
relying
the way
on
through
it.
college.
You don't rely on that for
I
college.
would not. Again, every family's different. If your finances are such that you think you will qualify for need-based aid, then again, I wouldn't say I would rely on it, but you could have a reasonable expectation of what you'll get.
Okay.
One thing to look out for though is that when you get your financial aid award letters from the colleges, understand what they're offering you, because sometimes they can be a little tricky and it looks like they're giving you free money and it's actually a student loan. So
Oh,
just double check
that's
what you're being
really
offered.
good to
Yeah.
know. Oh,
Yep.
and how do you do that? Like just read the fine print
You got
or?
to read the fine print. Yeah, make sure that it
No
says something
way.
like scholarship or grant. If it says loan, it will use the word loan, at least as far as I've seen. But they just kind of blend it in. They'll say, "Here's your total package. You need to know what that package is made up of."
That is interesting. That's
Yeah.
probably really key. Mm. What are some of the most unique scholarships you've seen?
Oh boy. Well, one that's available right now is from an organization called the Tall Clubs. So it's for people who are tall.
I love
Um,
it.
yeah, I don't have
I
the
love
numbers in
that.
front of me, but it's like over 6'2" or 6'3" for
Oh,
for
that's so
boys
cool.
and a little bit shorter for girls. So yeah, so that's one. I think there's one for redheaded students, left-handers. There's that.
Really?
We talked about like the little league one. It's actually not for somebody who's excels in baseball. It's for somebody who played baseball and is going into something else. So that's how my son qualified. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, I mean, if you name something, there's probably a
There's
scholarship for it.
probably something. Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
so cool. I want to look
yeah.
these up now.
Yeah, yeah, it's amazing. And something like $100 million in scholarships go unclaimed every year. So there's just a ton of opportunity out there. Yeah.
Whoa. So just no one applies for them and
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
oh my
Um,
gosh.
so always make sure that when you apply that you meet the eligibility requirements.
Okay.
But I have heard a few cases of people who've applied for scholarships that they didn't qualify for and they still
And
won
still got
because they
it.
were the only applicant. So don't make that a strategy,
Okay.
but you might try one or two.
Right.
Yeah.
What like time commitment? Like if you're applying for an application, what should you expect to put in?
It's going to vary by the student's age, but I'll talk to seniors since they're going to be the ones doing most of the scholarship applications. I think a good rule of thumb is either 30 minutes a day or 3 hours a week.
Okay.
More is better, but I know students have a lot on their plate from school to extracurriculars and trying to have a social life as well. So I think if they can do either 30 minutes a day or 3 hours a week, they can apply for enough scholarships that assuming they're doing a good job with their applications, they have nice essays and nice letters of recommendation, they should expect some level of success.
Can you just get a letter of recommendation that can just be for every scholarship, or does it have to be specifically for that scholarship?
You can. I think a best practice would be whoever is going to write your letter or the people who are going to write your letters, ask them to keep it on file as a Google Doc or whatever they're using, and just plug in the name of the scholarship uniquely each time.
Okay.
That way it looks a little more personalized, but it doesn't require that person to put in too much more effort.
Got it.
Now, there are some scholarships where the student can't submit that letter themselves. It has to come directly from the recommender. So know what those requirements are. I'd say
Okay.
it's about 50-50. Sometimes you can send it. Another great tip for letters of recommendation is if it can be on letterhead. So if it's like from a teacher, the school's letterhead, or if it's your boss at your work, company letterhead, that just makes it look a little more professional.
Okay. So boss teacher, I was going to ask you who are the best people to ask for a letter.
Yeah, so teachers, especially if they're related to the major that you're going into. So again, my son,
Okay.
it was his history teachers. Um, English teachers are always a nice source, even if you're not going into English, because they're typically better writers. Um, your coaches, if you're an athlete, your boss, the place you volunteer or places you volunteer, whoever's in charge there. And speaking of volunteer, keep track of the hours, the number of hours the student volunteers over the course of a year or over the course of their career.
Okay.
And also try to be very specific about what the impact was. So it'd be one thing to say I volunteered at a homeless shelter, but it's far more impactful to say, well, I volunteered at this homeless shelter from these dates to these dates, and we fed however many hundred people.
Mm.
So kind of quantify and qualify the impact you're having.
Do you ever suggest, because I'm sure some people get asked to write letters and they're like, oh God, another letter of recommendation. Do you ever suggest kind of like um an outline or a, hey, could you add these like how do you do it in a way that's not like, this is what I want you to say in my letter versus would you
Yeah, yep.
mind writing me a letter?
Well, even the teacher who knows you the best doesn't know you as well as
Right.
you know yourself.
Right.
So one of the things I recommend, a way to get started with scholarships, is actually putting together your resume. And your resume should always be changing. You should always be updating it with your achievements and awards and such. But whatever the most recent version of your resume is, give that to the person you're going to ask to write the letter. And that way they can reference some of those achievements. And you could even highlight, this is kind of the angle I'm going for with this
Mm.
scholarship. This is my narrative. So here's the things that perhaps you would like to mention. Of course, it has to come from that person, so you can only give so many suggestions, but that's a good way to at least let them know kind of your thoughts about it and kind of the angle that you're taking with it.
And how it would help. Yeah, because I'm sure they're
Yeah,
like, let me help you any way I can, and you can kind of tailor it a little bit.
sure.
Um,
Yep, absolutely.
are a lot of scholarships just awarded to one student, or are there some scholarships that are like, we're taking 10 people and giving it?
Yeah, yep. It's a mix. So I mentioned that VFW one. So um they give out, gosh, it's got to be several thousand prizes between
Wow.
the local, state, and national level. So
Okay.
that's one of the strategies that I recommend is find scholarships that have multiple prizes. Um, a lot of the senior year scholarships, especially like in fall of a student's senior year, there are some really big ones like Coca-Cola is one, Equitable Excellence is another. There's about a dozen or more that give a ton of prizes, ranging from a few thousand up to some really big prizes. So if you meet the eligibility criteria, I recommend applying for those. They're still competitive, but at least you have more than one chance. For the scholarships that only give one prize or maybe two prizes, you want to be focusing on things that match your narrative. So again, for my son, it was things related to history. For somebody else, it could be, I don't know if they're going to go into medical school, things related to becoming a doctor. But whatever your narrative is, those are the scholarships you want to focus on, especially if there's just the single prize being offered.
Okay. What am I missing? Because I feel like there's so much. Like, what are some other common questions that you get?
Well, real honestly, that question you ask about how much time, I think that's the question I get
Okay.
the most.
How do I get
One
my
thing
kid
to
to
be
sit down for 30 minutes a day and do this?
yeah, yeah. Well, and that's another reason if you can start them early, they've gotten into the habit and it just becomes
Yeah.
part of their routine.
Are some of the
Um,
question or some of the like essays like cut and paste where you're like, this one asked this question, I can use this essay, or a lot of them like you got to start from scratch?
so there's kind of two categories. There's the scholarships that are asking more about you, the student, and yes, you can kind of build a body of 4 or 5 essays that you can cut
Okay.
and paste. I would very rarely recommend using the exact same essay, but just small tweaks
Okay.
can be enough. Then there are going to be topic-based essays that you're probably not going to be able to reuse very often, although there are a few topics you'll find quite a bit. One is going to be like distracted driving or reckless driving. So if you did a little research early on, you could kind of build a body of ideas that you could just pull from and plug into a bunch of different distracted driving
So
scholarships.
the essay you're writing is about distracted driving or
Yeah, distracted driving
oh,
prevention. So everything from like drunk driving to texting while driving.
oh, oh,
Yeah, yep.
interesting.
Hmm, yep.
Wouldn't have known
Yeah,
that.
I think that's probably the most common topical theme. But really, the most common theme is going to be more asking about the student.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
What else am I missing? What?
So once you have decided on a college or are at the point of you're looking at different colleges, understand the school's what they call scholarship stacking or scholarship displacement policy. Scholarship stacking means that you can take the outside scholarships that you've won and stack them on top of whatever their financial aid offer is.
Okay.
Scholarship displacement means that if you bring in outside scholarships, they will take away either dollar for dollar or at some ratio, whatever they're offering. Now, I'll be a
Oh,
little flippant. We said we were not going to patronize colleges that basically penalize my son for doing
we're
extra
getting
work. So we took
scholarships.
those off the table. Um,
Are there a lot of colleges that do that?
there's enough that it's a problem, in my opinion. So
Wow.
yeah, you definitely want to be aware of that policy. And if you just have your heart set on that school, focus on the scholarships, the outside scholarships that pay you directly, because you don't
Okay.
have to claim those as a scholarship.
Okay.
You have to claim them on your taxes. But one of the workarounds I would say is you had a job as a freelance writer. And that's how I got that money in my bank
Yeah.
account.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Will the scholarship, we just did our taxes, so this is why I'm asking. Will the scholarship company just like mail you the paperwork you have to turn in? Because I cannot see an 18-year-old boy, my own son, when he's 18,
Mhm.
like knowing how to do his taxes. And because at that point, you're not really doing taxes unless you have a job. So how do you
Yeah.
take care of taxes with scholarships?
Well, I do want to be careful because I'm definitely not a tax advisor. So
Okay,
talk to your tax professional about this.
got it.
But if most scholarships, if they send the student the money directly, they will send you, what is that, a W-2 or
Got it.
whatever
Okay.
that form is in the mail for
And you
taxes.
just turn that in. Okay.
Yeah, if the scholarship was sent to, if the funds were sent directly to the school, I don't recall that we've ever received any kind of tax form because there's no tax penalty for those, as far as I understand.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Really quick, going back to the scholarship stacking.
Mhm.
So when you were looking to apply to schools, you knew ahead of time which schools did that, and then you could pick and choose where to apply?
Yeah, so most of the schools will have it somewhere on their website.
Okay.
Some are more explicit than others. If they don't, talk to the financial aid office and just ask them what the policy is. And if they hem and haw, they're probably displacing
Okay.
because they don't want to tell you that.
Yes. Oh,
So,
that's such
yeah.
a bummer. You're right. It's so much work to get these scholarships. Why would we penalize kids for doing that?
Yeah, yep, absolutely.
Oh, interesting. So is your son still majored in history?
Ironically,
He
no.
changed. I was
He
wondering.
he changed, yeah, he changed right as he was going off to school. He was majoring in economics and
Okay, but that didn't
look,
change the scholarships though. He already got them. It was
yeah, thankfully it did not. But that is something to be aware of. Some scholarships are for specific majors.
okay.
So, if he could have potentially lost some of those scholarships. Thankfully, that wasn't the case.
Okay. You said
Um, eco-
engineering is what he went into?
Economics,
Economics.
economics.
Okay.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, and it's considered there was one scholarship where there was a question and it's considered close enough. It's what's considered like social sciences.
Got it.
So they said that was close enough.
Okay.
So
That's so cool.
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
All right. So if parents were looking to find you or listen to your podcast, because you have a podcast all about this, how can we
I
find
do.
you?
Yep. So the name of the podcast is Your Daily Scholarship. It's on pretty much all the popular platforms. If you're not a listener and you prefer to read about scholarships, I put the same information in a daily Substack newsletter, also called Your Daily Scholarship. Then my website is simply nodebtcollege.com. You can find Dave the Scholarship Coach on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And I do have a course and membership program that's going to be coming out beginning of March-ish, still in process. But it's a way that I'm going to be able to share a lot more information to more people than just working
Mhm.
one-on-one. So yeah,
That's awesome.
excited for that. Yeah.
Like you probably never in a million years thought this is what you'd be doing at this point in your life, but like,
Yeah,
wow,
had
look
no
where it led
idea.
you. And do
Yeah.
you ever, I bet parents like text you, email you all the time, like, we just won this scholarship. And you're like, this is so awesome that you can be a
Yeah,
part
that's
of
my
that.
favorite part. Absolutely. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, and I'll mention one other thing that does bring up something. Scholarships are a marathon. They're not a sprint. And even if you only applied for one scholarship and you won, there is still a lag from the effort you put into that reward. So you need to help your kid build some resilience in learning, you know, we don't have to be instantly gratified. This is something we're putting money in the bank, basically.
Yeah.
We're
Well,
depositing stuff here.
I do like that you mentioned like even apply for those big ones. If you don't get them, it's still teaching you how to go through the process because I'm
Absolutely.
pretty sure your kids are like what percentage if you apply to 100 of these scholarships, what percentage do you actually get?
Yeah, so for the scholarships he applied for in high school, my son ended up with about a 20% win rate, which is
Okay.
actually still pretty high. Now in college, I should say you can keep applying for scholarships in
Just gonna ask
college.
that.
And
Okay.
yeah, yep. So he has, and he's probably not 100%, but it's really close because he doesn't need a ton of money at this point. So he's only applying for scholarships that he is pretty confident he can do well in.
Okay. Is it
So
harder
yeah.
to get a scholarship as a college student?
There are definitely not as many opportunities. Like
Okay.
it is definitely a bell curve with the peak of the bell being senior year.
Okay.
But there, if you have a college student who's looking for money, this is a great avenue to explore. You're probably not going to find those $20,000 or $50,000 scholarships, but if you're happy with a few $1,000s here and there, I think it all adds up. And it's less money that they're going to have to repay or, work
Yeah.
for or whatever.
Yeah. I
And
love this
the
is
other thing
giving
about
us hope.
yeah, and the other thing about scholarships is that it's a great resume enhancer, especially when it relates to your major. So yeah, there's a lot of extra benefits
Yeah.
than just
Not
the
only the
money.
money, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, that's awesome. Well, you have
yeah.
like totally filled my brain with lots of
Mhm.
ideas. And I'm gonna go and tell my husband, like, we can put them through college. This is
Yeah,
doable.
yep, yeah. Well, I'm going to email you a link to a scholarship that at least your two older ones could probably apply for this year.
Oh, that's so cool. That is so cool. I'm sure they're like, what, college?
Yeah,
Like you,
yep.
yes, yes. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This was really, really interesting.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to it and really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you.
Okay, those of you who have middle school, high school age students, look up Dave. This information, I think, every parent needs to know this. And if your child is thinking about going to college, what a great way to fund your college through these amazing scholarships that Dave is talking about. So take a look at the show notes. I was very honored that he came on the podcast and could give us all this information. Now, until next week's conversation, I want to remind you that everyone burns their first pancake, so just keep flipping.